Europe is staring down a direct threat of war from Iran, energy prices are spiraling out of control, and 10 countries are scrambling evacuation plans for their citizens trapped in the Middle East. Meanwhile, the EU is quietly pushing through a massive trade deal without even asking its own parliament, and Germany's streets are filling with students protesting a return to conscription. If you think that sounds like a lot, trust me, the way these stories connect at the end is something you do not want to miss. I am Andrew Meet Rich, and this is Europe. Informed. Connected. If this kind of deep, no-nonsense analysis of European affairs matters to you, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It genuinely makes a difference. And if you want to go even further in supporting independent journalism, consider becoming a sponsor or dropping a super thanks. Every bit of support helps keep this channel running and these stories coming to you without any filters. Let us get right into it. Iran's foreign minister came out with a statement this week that should have every European paying attention. He said, and I quote, that any European participation in strikes alongside the United States and Israel would constitute complicity in aggression and an act of war. Not a diplomatic protest, not a sternly worded letter, an explicit declaration that Europe could find itself at war with Iran. Now, let that sink in for a moment. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom all condemned the Iranian strikes. France is not just talking, they are sending an aircraft carrier into the region. The United Kingdom is already actively shooting down Iranian missiles over the Arabian Peninsula. And here is where it gets particularly uncomfortable for the European Union itself. Britain operates a military base in Cyprus, which, let us remember, is an EU member state. If Iran decides that base constitutes an act of aggression, you have a direct military threat on European Union soil. This is not hypothetical anymore. Now, before you think this is just a Middle Eastern conflict that happens to involve Europeans from a distance, consider what is already happening to your wallet. Because this war is not staying overseas. Qatar has halted LNG production. Let me say that again. Qatar, one of Europe's most critical liquefied natural gas suppliers, has stopped production. Gas prices across Europe are surging. If this conflict drags on even a few more weeks, Asian consumers will start competing directly with Europe for American LNG shipments. And Europe is not going to win that bidding war easily. Macron has announced a coalition to protect shipping lanes through the Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, and the Red Sea. But protecting shipping lanes and actually keeping prices stable are two very different things. In Germany, the pain is already hitting at the pump. Diesel has crossed €2 per litre for the first time since 2022. The most expensive stations are charging €2.50 per litre. Filling a 50-litre tank now costs €124. The economy minister says there are no plans for a price cap. No plans. Just let that sit with you for a moment while you calculate your next commute, and it does not stop at the gas station. Production gas costs in Germany have jumped 45% since the Qatar LNG halt. Heating oil is up 20%. Monthly heating costs for an average household could rise by €50 to €100. Bread prices are climbing 10%. Restaurants are hiking menus by 5 to 10%. They are calling it a cost tsunami, and honestly, that might be understating it. This is the kind of cascading economic pressure that rewrites household budgets overnight and forces businesses to make decisions they have been trying to avoid. Now, while energy prices are tearing through European wallets, 10 countries are preparing for something even more dramatic. Germany has already evacuated 250 citizens from the Middle East, but 30,000 Germans are still stranded in the region. And it is not just Germany. Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Iceland, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania have all agreed on joint evacuation coordination plans. 10 nations, simultaneously preparing to pull their people out of a conflict zone. When was the last time you saw that kind of coordinated emergency response outside of a natural disaster? This is governments quietly acknowledging that this situation could deteriorate fast. Speaking of things happening quietly, let us talk about what the European Commission just did with the Mercosur trade deal. The Commission decided to provisionally apply the EU-Mercosur agreement without full parliamentary ratification. This is a trade deal that opens up a combined market of 700 million people. German industry is celebrating, French farmers are furious, and critics are calling it exactly what it looks like, bypassing democratic procedures. Now here is the thing, you can argue the economic merits of Mercosur all day long. Access to South American markets, cheaper imports, new export opportunities for European manufacturers. But the process matters. When the European Commission starts applying major trade agreements without the European Parliament having its full say, it sets a precedent that should concern everyone, regardless of where you stand on the deal itself. Democracy is not just about outcomes, it is about how you get there. And apparently, the Commission has decided the scenic route through parliamentary approval is a bit too slow for their taste. If you are finding this analysis useful, please share this video with someone who cares about what is happening in Europe. It helps more than you might think. Meanwhile, the European Commission is also proposing a significant shift in how public procurement works across the bloc. The new plan would prioritize European-made products in strategic sectors. In plain terms, when governments buy things, from medical equipment to defense technology, European manufacturers would get preferential treatment. Spain and France are on board. Germany, however, is pushing back hard, calling it a bureaucratic nightmare, and you can see both sides here. On one hand, reducing dependence on foreign supply chains makes strategic sense, especially when you have just watched your energy security evaporate because of a conflict thousands of kilometers away. On the other hand, Germany's export-driven economy thrives on open markets, and any move toward protectionism could invite retaliation from trading partners. This tension between strategic autonomy and free trade is becoming the defining economic debate in Europe, and it is not going away anytime soon, especially not with a war in the Middle East, reminding everyone just how fragile those global supply chains really are. Now let us turn to Germany's streets, where thousands of students are making their voices heard. Protests have erupted across the country against the proposed return of conscription. 3,000 demonstrators gathered in Berlin alone. The slogans tell the story. This is not on the curriculum. Send the Chancellor to the front line. The new system being proposed would make a military questionnaire mandatory for all young men, with the possibility of being called up for service. This is not just about defense policy. This is a generational clash. Young Germans who grew up in an era of relative peace and stability are being told that the security architecture they took for granted may no longer hold, and their response is visceral. Whether you agree with conscription or not, these protests reveal something important about European society right now. There is a deep anxiety about the direction things are heading, and a significant portion of the population is not ready to accept that military preparedness should become part of their personal reality. And this brings us to something that ties many of these threads together, and it is the story I wanted to save for the end, because of how perfectly it captures the impossible balancing act Europe faces right now. Kaja Kallas, the EU's foreign policy chief, issued a warning this week that should be a wake-up call for everyone. She said the Middle East crisis must not push Ukraine off the agenda. Think about what that means in practical terms. The same military assets, the same defense budgets, the same political bandwidth that Europe needs for Iran are the same resources Ukraine depends on for its survival. Every aircraft carrier sent to the Persian Gulf is an aircraft carrier not patrolling European waters. Every billion euros spent on energy security is a billion euros not going to Ukrainian defense support. And here is the cruel irony. Russia actually benefits from this crisis in multiple ways. Higher oil prices fill Moscow's war chest. Western attention diverted to Iran means less focus on the Eastern Front. And if Iran, which has been one of Russia's key military suppliers, gets weakened in this conflict, Moscow might lose a weapons partner, but it gains something potentially more valuable, a distracted and overstretched West. The EU's response so far has been a carefully worded call for maximum restraint. Maximum restraint. When your continent is facing simultaneous threats from two directions, energy prices are destroying household budgets, citizens are stranded in conflict zones, and your own streets are filling with protesters, maximum restraint is not a strategy, it is a prayer. But here is what makes Europe's position both terrifying and, oddly, clarifying. There is no more room for ambiguity. The era of debating whether Europe needs strategic autonomy is over. The question now is whether Europe can build it fast enough. NATO Secretary-General Rutte welcomed Macron's offer to extend France's nuclear deterrence to European allies, but he was quick to stress that the American nuclear umbrella remains the ultimate supreme guarantee of European security. And he is probably right for now. Russia's nuclear arsenal dwarfs anything Europe could field independently. but for now is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence, because if this crisis has shown us anything, it is that relying on any single guarantee, whether it is American military protection, Qatari gas, or Chinese manufacturing, is a vulnerability, not a strategy. Europe's future depends on its ability to diversify, to build redundancy, to become genuinely capable of defending its own interests on multiple fronts simultaneously. Whether the continent's leaders have the courage and the political capital to make that happen while their citizens are struggling with fuel bills and their young people are marching against conscription, well, that is the question that will define the next decade of European history. And right now, nobody has a convincing answer. If this video gave you something to think about, please hit that like button. It costs nothing, but it tells the algorithm that this kind of content matters, and that means more people get to see it. Subscribing takes one click, and make sure you never miss an update when the next crisis hits, and let us be honest, the next one is never far away. If you want to go further, consider becoming a channel sponsor or leaving a super thanks. Running an independent channel takes real research, real fact-checking, and real time. There are no corporate sponsors here, no editorial boards telling me what I can and cannot say. It is just me, the sources, and you. Your support is what makes this possible, and I genuinely appreciate every single one of you who watches, shares, and engages. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you think Europe goes from here. I read every single one, and the conversations we have down there are often just as insightful as the videos themselves. Thank you for watching.